Hello, I'm Dennis, and I'm going to show you in this video how to install a rough-in delta valve with using CPVC pipe. To get started, there's a couple of things you're going to have to do before you actually mount the valve. You're going to have to put a couple of stringers in, and we'll just start with the first one. Now, I've already got it mounted in, and I'm going to show you how I came up with where I put it. What the stringer is just a 2x4 or a 2x6 that you're going to mount the valve to. It'll mount on there like that. I usually just take this cap off to get it out of my way. And the way you determine where you're going to put this stringer is from the base of the valve to this lip is 2 3/4 of an inch. This should be at your finished wall. So what I'm going to do, this will get concrete board or HardieBacker board. It would be a 1/2 inch thick, and then it'll also get tile, so that's going to be another 1/4 of an inch, or 3/4 of an inch. So you need to be the distance from here to here is 2 3/4 inches. So in other words, you need to set this back 2 inches. So that will protrude this black flange out 3/4 of an inch away from the wall. And you can come out just a little further than that because your tile, I can't think of what it's called. The thin set, yeah. The thin set's going to add a little bit to it. So what I do is I cut this to size, and then I go ahead and I mark at the halfway mark, and I make a mark on my 2x4, my stud, as to the height that I want it. And generally 46, 48 inches, 46 to 50 inches we'll say, is at the height you want it from the finished floor. So I measured up, I make a mark here, and then I make a mark in. And I do that on both sides. And then I divide my 2x4 in half, which is a 1 3/4, and I make a little mark. And I just make that mark line up with the line that I made. And then I nail it on there. And then I'm going to determine where, well, I make a mark back here too at my 2 inches. So I have my 2 3/4 inch reveal here. And then I measure over to where I want the center of my valve to be. And I'm going to make a mark there, okay? So then, I mean, I'll probably get a little more complicated than what it really has to be, but I like for it to be nice and straight. So I've got my center mark, and if you look on the back of here, your valve, it says up on it, and that has got to point up. So this is where your screws will go through here and here. The distance between the two is 1.5 inches, and then the distance between here and here is 2.5 inches. So what I do is I get my 1.5 inches, 3/4 from each side of my center line. I draw another line, and then my 2.5, if the board's 3.5 inches wide, I come down a 1/2 inch. So a 1/2 inch down and a 1/2 inch up, and make a mark, and that should line up my screw holes. So what I'll do is I'll take this off. It just pops off, maybe. Come on. And I'll lay it off to the side because you can snap it back on there. And something you're going to want to do before I even mount this is I go ahead and put my female adapter on here. And you can buy female adapters that are just totally CPVC, but I recommend not doing that. I recommend getting either the brass fittings, or these are stainless fittings, and they've got the CPVC adapter all already connected and everything. The all CPVC, they tend to crack. You're not supposed to put them on hot water anyways. They're only recommended for cold. But you go ahead and you put some pipe dope on here. And there's not a whole lot to that. I'll just kind of show you real quick. But you get you some pipe dope, and you coat the threads real good. And what I'm going to do, I'll just go ahead and do all of them, and then I'll be back with you after I get done putting the adapters on. All right, now that we've got the fittings on our valve, something I want to point out for sure is make sure you've got the up going up. And I just took a galvanized cap and put it on the bottom one, because I'm not going down to a tub. The bottom would be going down to a tub if you were hooking up a tub, but this is for a shower unit only. So you make sure you got them good and tight, and you're pretty much ready to put them on there. And you just line it up with your marks you made earlier. This is why I take that plastic off. And I can get it lined up. We're going to line the bottom one up. And that's about all there is to setting that valve. It's possible that you might have to drill a hole like these other two valves I've put. There's 3 valves in here. The other 2 valves I've had to drill a hole. So you might have to drill a hole, and if you have to, you're going to want to center up your fitting with your line. And you might look at it, just make sure it looks like it's pretty well centered, very well up this way and this way on our lines that we drew earlier. And the next thing I'm going to do is you're going to have to put a stringer up top for your shower connection, or for the shower head. So you're going to go ahead and cut a piece of 2x4 the same width that you need it to be. And again, I drew my lines at the height that I wanted it to be for the center. So I've got my lines drawn, and I've gone ahead and got my board. So we'll put it up in there, and again, I've drawn my little lines on here, and that just helps to keep it all centered. So, and the way you're going to determine how far back to set this one is they also make these fittings that have got a brass or a stainless nipple in it that is adapted to CPVC instead of using the CPVC solid. These are just, you got a whole lot less risk of the fitting cracking. So I like to use these. You know, they're $3 or $4 a piece. It just gives you a whole lot better security. So what I did was I sat it on top of my valve, and well, you can also set it, you know, just line it up with something that's going to be the same distance, and then you can measure in what we got about 1.25 inches. So you would want this to be back 1.25 inches. So in other words, you would make your mark up here. Can you see this? You're going to make your mark 1.25 inches in, and that is where you're going to, I won't do it on both sides, but that's where your board would end up. So, and we have it all lined up. And that'll make this so that it sits flat on there, like that. Okay, so let me get that set up in there, and then I'll be back with you in a minute. All right, I've got my stringer nailed up in there, and what you're going to do is you're going to, the same center mark that you made for the valve, just measure over to it. In this case, it's 4 3/8, so you're going to make a mark at 4 3/8 of an inch. And that should be the center of this piece. And my height, I made this 6 feet 10 inches. By the time I get my tile and everything in, it'll be about 6 feet 8 inches. So That's generally, I've been told, anywhere from 6 feet to 7 feet to put your height. It's kind of one of them, it's not a hard set rule. It's one of them personal things. So you can make it however high you want it. If you're extra tall, make it tall. If you're standard, I just tried to make it as standard as possible for resale value. So anyways, so you're going to put this up here, but you're not going to put it up there yet. You're going to wait until you get this piece attached, this piece of pipe, and then you'll screw it to it. Just makes it easier to attach everything. But everything should line up with that. So now we're ready to run the water lines. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a 90 here down. I've already got my water lines run across. So we're just going to run a 90 down to this. And this is the depth from here to the seat is a 1/2 inch. So just remember that. On 3/4 of an inch, it's 3/4 inch pipe, it's 3/4 of an inch. So from the lip to the seat. So this is going to be kind of tight. So we're just going to cut this at 1 inch, put a piece of pipe on it, and then we'll go 90 down to this pipe that's down here. So let me get those cut, and we'll go from there. All right, we know this is this line is going to be pretty close to this 2x4 or this stud. So we're going to hold our fitting kind of against the stud and measure back to this pipe that we've got here. And it's about 10 1/4 inches. So if you add a 1/2 inch for your fitting on each end, that gives you 1 inch. So if it's 10 1/4, we're going to cut our piece of pipe at 11 1/4. So let me cut that real quick, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, something I like to do when I get a piece of pipe, after I've cut it, I like to take a piece of sandpaper and just kind of go over the tip of it. It kind of chamfers the lip on it, kind of takes the sharpness off, and it also gets any burrs off. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and put this together. And you can kind of wiggle it into there so that it's seated all the way. And we're just going to dry fit it for now. And then we're going to measure up for our next piece. Just hold your fitting up there where it's going to sit and measure down. We're going to have about 21 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to go 22 3/4 of an inch. So that's our next piece. I'm going to go ahead and cut it. As far as cutting, there's a couple of different ways. You can buy these cutters, very nice. They cut nice and straight, easy to use. Or you can cut it with a hacksaw if you don't want to go to the expense of buying one of these. But so you put your piece in there. And you have your piece up here. And again, you're just going to dry fit it. So just to make sure everything's going to work out right. And what you can do is you can make a mark on these so that you put them back in the same place. And what we're going to end up doing is we'll take this valve off and we'll put this piece together with the valve off, because otherwise you can't get it in there. I mean, I could drill a hole and come out down here, but it's just as simple to do this. So it's just as easy to take the valve off, put it back together. So let me get that taken apart and we'll glue it up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you how I put all this together. I'm going to go ahead and mark it with my pencil. and then we're going to take it back apart. We're going to clean each piece. Get this in first. Make sure you don't mix up which end you're doing. I'll go ahead and clean both ends of my fitting so I know which, well, this one's marked, so it doesn't really matter, but if I'm just doing one piece, I'll clean both sides so I don't get them mixed up. And you're going to turn it and line it up with your line. Hold it for a few seconds. Do the same thing here. And now what we're going to do is we'll just cut an inch piece. We'll put half of it in here and then put it on the valve. So let me do that real quick. Sit in there good. We'll clean the other side. Pipe in there, turn it. Just hold it right up against where it's going to go and just hold it. Now you can put your screws back in your valve. And now you've got your cold side done. Cold's on the right, hot's on the left. So now we're ready to do the left side, or the hot side. So what we're going to do is I'm going to measure about what I need and come down to this other pipe that we've got here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut a piece. I'm going to cut a little long. Should be about, well, I'll tell you what we do. We'll go ahead and put a piece on there. We'll go ahead and put a 90 on there. And we'll just hold this one where we need it to be. And we're going to be about 21 3/4 again. So we've got 22 3/4 we need to cut this piece. Put our 90s on there, just dry fit them. sure it's going to work out like we need it to. Looks good. What I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this back just a little bit so I have a little bit more to play with here. So I'm going to cut about 2 inches. Well, we can go ahead and get a measurement on that. Probably going to be about 1/2 inch, I'd say. Yeah, about 1/2 inch. And so I'm going to cut it back a couple inches so that I'm back a little and I can get that in there and turn it. It can get pretty hard to turn. So if we go 1 inch, we'll cut another inch off. So that'll give us 1.5 inches. So this piece will end up being 2.5 inches long. So I'm ready to put these together. Let's go ahead and dry fit it. Wow. I messed up there, didn't I? Get that in there. Pretty good there, so we're going to go ahead and make some marks. Line our lines up. We're not going to put this in yet. We're not going to glue that yet. We're going to get this piece on first. Okay, so now we're ready to clean this last piece. The reason I wanted to, because I want to be able to turn it. It's probably going to be a little hard to turn, so I'll probably have to get some pliers out and turn it with it. Go on both ends. Try to keep your fingers out of it. Squeeze it together. See, I have to turn it with some pliers. It's kind of hard to turn that little piece. So that's all set. You got your hot and your cold water running out now. Now we're ready to put this piece in. So we're going to determine this center mark. We say 1 3/4 inches. 1 3/4 inches. And so what we want to do is take our piece and kind of line it up there. To determine how long we want it. Just line it up on your marks. And you can measure the top of that one to this one. We got about 29 5/8 of an inch. You could actually go ahead and glue a piece in there, and if it was long, and cut it off to whatever height you needed it. But we know we're pretty good now. So it should be about right. Yep. Let's go ahead and get this glued. Trying to sit it flat on there, hold it down. Perfect in our spot up there. Give me a couple of screws. Put our piece on there. Just going to line it up. I'm just using drywall screws. Now you're all set. So that's all there is to putting a Delta valve in, rough end valve with CPVC. Just a couple of things I want to go back over. Make sure you use the stainless or brass adapters, and same with the adapters up here. And don't forget about your stringers. Just make it a lot easier to put them in. A couple things I wanted to mention. If your stud's not straight, you can level up your shower head. You can just level it up to, center it on the fitting, and level it up to where, and make your mark up there so you know where to put it. You're going to want to go ahead and put your plaster ring back on. It says up on it. On the inside it says up. So that's how you're going to want to put it back on. And it just snaps back on. So, and then just kind of as protection, you can put your little cup back on there just to kind of protect it while you're roughing everything in. I'm not absolutely sure, but I believe you can actually leave the plaster ring off, or you can leave it on. It's kind of optional because your trim ring is going to cover it. But I think it's kind of totally up to you. I generally leave them on there, but you might check with a Delta dealership wherever you buy it from. But anyways, and I also wanted to mention, anywhere you run pipe through the stud, and if it's very close to the edge, you're going to want to put one of these plates on there. They just nail on. It's got little barbs on it that stick out. And you just nail it on there, and that prevents from running a nail or a screw through the water line, or if it was a drain line, either one. But you'd want to put that on there anywhere it's coming close. So we'll be using quite a few of them through here. But that's about it. So thank you again.